Hello, welcome to the January 2010 video edition of the Iowa General Fund Monthly Memo. My name is Jeff Robinson, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, the nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa Legislature. This month's memo presents information covering January 2010 and the first 7 months of fiscal year 2010. Net revenue for the month of January was $106.1 million, below January 2009. On a percent base, the month's decrease was 20.3%. Similar to how last month's 12.2% increase was an accounting illusion, the large decrease this month was in significant part a product of deposit timing differences between last year and this year. The table shows the net general fund revenue totals for December and January compared to the same months last year, with December up 12.2% and January down 20.3%. Combined, the 2 months experienced a decline of 6.5%, driven in large part by poor individual and corporate income tax estimate payments over the past 2 months. While in most any other scenario, a decline of 6.5% would be downright disturbing, the drop of Iowa General Fund revenue experienced in previous months was even more severe. This table provides a look at the first 7 months of the cash year, July through January. Over the 7 months, gross revenue decreased 5.2%, while regular tax refunds increased 6.7%. School infrastructure refunds issued so far this year increased $37.7 million. On a cash basis, 7 months of the infrastructure refunds have been issued in fiscal year 2010, versus only 66 months in fiscal year 2009, accounting for much of the increase in this item. The combination of gross revenue, regular tax refunds, and school infrastructure refunds produced a net revenue growth rate for the first 7 months of negative 7.5%, or in dollar terms, negative $256.9 million. The December 2009 Revenue Estimating Conference, or REC, set the expected growth rate in net general fund revenue, excluding transfers, at negative 8.5% for the year, making the net cash growth rate for the year currently 1 full percentage point ahead of the REC estimate. The net revenue graph on the front page of the memo shows that net revenue has declined compared to the previous year in every month of this fiscal year except December, and that month would have shown a decline without a deposit timing issue. A look back over the past 15 months shows that with the exception of December 2009 and January 2008, every month has shown a net revenue decline since November of 2008. And both of those 2 increased months were impacted by the same revenue deposit timing issue. Without that timing issue, each of the past 15 months would have shown a decline in net revenue. Let's now look more closely at 3 important contributors to Iowa's net general fund revenue. First, personal income tax. Driven by poor personal income tax estimate payment deposits, gross personal income tax was negative 13.6% in January, and is down 3.9% cash fiscal year to date. Declines have been shown in 9 of the past 12 months, with the decline in April, May, and June most significant due to the negative impact of the tax filing season this past spring. The negative impact on general fund receipts due to the latest quarterly personal income tax estimate payment is shown in this table. This deposit gets remitted to the state over a 3-month period, but a large majority is deposited in December and January. This year's 2-month total is $107.3 million, 22% below last year's level and also below the level of the previous 2 fiscal years. Please note that this table had incorrect fiscal year designations in the December monthly video memo. Gross sales and use tax revenue in January decreased 8.3% and has now been negative in 5 of the 7 months this cash fiscal year. While the negative 8.3% for this month is troublesome, the month ended on a weekend, likely resulting in some revenue pushed from January into February. Quarterly sales and use tax deposits are made in early February, and those transactions will provide a solid indication of recent sales and use tax performance. Gross corporate tax revenue for January decreased by more than half, negative 50.7%. While part of this drop was due to last year's timing delay, the decline for January far exceeds that issue. The REC expected growth rate is negative 18.1% for this year, so the year-to-date decline of 18.3% is currently in line with that estimate. Overall, the month of January 2010 was a negative month, although not near as negative as the bottom line negative 20.3% would indicate. At negative 7.5% growth year to date, net revenue is slightly better than the current REC projection for the entire fiscal year. However, the 2009 personal income tax return season has just begun, and the large drop in personal income tax estimate payments experienced the last 2 months is not encouraging. General fund revenue depends most significantly on the number of tax-paying jobs in Iowa. Let's take a moment to look at long-term employment numbers and zero in on the unemployment drops, or the employment drops, around economic recessions. This chart shows Iowa non-farm employment totals back to 1973. The blue line shows the 12-month average of the unadjusted version of that series, and the blue line is read off the axis on your left. Significant declines are shown in the first half of the 1980s, the first half of the 2000s, and the most recent decline starting October 2008. The drop in the annual average is shown by the red line and is read off the right axis. The current drop in Iowa employment is approaching 40,000 jobs, December 2008 to December 2009. The year-over-year drop is now worse than the 2000s recession and is approaching the 1980s recessions. This chart provides some perspective to the previous one. This chart shows Iowa job losses calculated from peak employment around each of those 3 significant recessions. To adjust for the growth in Iowa employment between recessions, the job loss calculations are computed in percentages and then calculated off the October 2008 12-month average. The graph shows the recessions of the early 2000s resulted in a peak-to-trough loss of 40,000 jobs, and it took almost 3 years for job losses to stop. For the twin recessions of the early 1980s, the equivalent job loss was almost 140,000 jobs, and the decline lasted more than 3 years. The black line represents the current job recession. Iowa employment peaked 14 months ago, October of 2008, when calculated off that 12-month average. The job losses are much more severe than the early 2000s recession, but not quite as severe as the early 1980s recessions. The Bureau of Labor Statistics will issue revised employment numbers for calendar year 2009 in March, and the job loss path of this recession may look somewhat different after that happens. For perspective, the same math is used to produce this chart showing U.S. job losses around the past 5 recessions. The current drop of 5.8 million jobs, peak to trough, far exceeds the drop shown in the 4 previous U.S. job loss periods. Iowa's economic growth and the condition of the state general fund impact all Iowa residents, and I hope this video presentation assists in your understanding of both. I thank you very much for your interest. Goodbye, and I hope you check us out next month.